Comment below. Do you remember your first Queen song? Type 1 if you do, or 0 if you discovered them later in life. Let's go back to August 9, 1986. Freddie Mercury took the stage for the last time. His doctor told him not to perform. His voice was deteriorating, and a fan in the audience would die during Who Wants to Live Forever. But what occurred next surprised everyone. From John Deacon's violent outburst to Mercury's strange absence following the performance. Today, we'll uncover what truly happened at Queen's last concert. Early music education. Freddie Mercury was born on September 5, 1946 in Zanzibar, a tiny island that was under British administration. His parents were Parsis and practiced Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest religions. Freddie's birth was unique in several respects. He was born with 4 additional teeth, which he subsequently felt gave him a unique vocal range that allowed him to sing in 4 octaves. He was raised in an environment rich in African, Arab, and Indian traditions, which inspired his subsequent style and music. When Freddie was 17, his life changed dramatically. The Zanzibar Revolution in 1964 became deadly for families like his, and they had to flee. Thousands of people were slain, and his family fled to England. Prior to that, Freddie spent his early years in India. At the age of 8, his parents sent him to St. Peter's, a British-style boarding school in Panchgani. This school near Mumbai became a special destination for Freddie. It was then that he began calling himself Freddie. It's also when his passion for music began. An instructor saw his talent and advised his parents to spend more for music instruction. This proved to be a life-changing decision. At school, Freddie founded his first band, the Hectics, with 4 buddies. They sang rock and roll tunes by prominent singers such as Cliff Richard and Little Richard. Freddie was just 12, but he had already demonstrated a natural talent for music. He also admired Bollywood vocalists such as Lata Mangeshkar, whose soaring voice influenced his subsequent performances. Even at an early age, Freddie began combining Western and Indian elements which subsequently distinguished Queen's music. When Freddie's family emigrated to England, they settled into a little house in Feltham near London. Life wasn't easy at first, but Freddie remained motivated to pursue his aspirations. In 1964, he enrolled at Isleworth Polytechnic to study art, subsequently attending Ealing Art College. At Ealing, Freddie learned graphic design, which he eventually used to develop Queen's renowned logo. To support himself, Freddie performed odd jobs such as cleaning dishes at Heathrow Airport. While in Ealing, Freddie met Tim Steffel, a member of the band Smile, alongside guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor. Freddie got acquainted with them and frequently suggested ideas for their performances. When Tim left Smile in 1970, Freddie took over as the band's singer. He recommended naming the band Queen because it sounded great and strong. Their first performance as Queen occurred in June 1970 at a charity function. The band still needed a bassist, and after a few auditions, they discovered John Deacon in 1971. Around this period, Freddie chose to alter his last name to Mercury. He got the concept from a lyric in a song he wrote called Mother Mercury. Look at what they did to me. Queen was not an instant smash. Their debut album was released in 1973. However, it failed to chart in the UK and only reached number 83 in the United States. Their second album, Queen II, released in 1974, did not fare any better. It only reached number 49 in the United Kingdom. The band was becoming irritated, but their third album, Sheer Heart Attack, eventually turned things around. It featured Killer Queen, a song that made their breakthrough. It reached number 2 in the UK and number 12 in the United States. Freddie Mercury composed Killer Queen one night while sitting at his piano. He came up with the words first, which was uncommon for him because he typically begins with the music. The song depicted the narrative of a sophisticated upper-class prostitute. Not only was the narrative memorable, but so was the sound. Brian May delivered a stunning guitar solo with a 6-pence coin as a pick, and they created layers of sound using various production techniques. The song made Queen famous, but it also sparked some internal conflict among the band. Roger Taylor was concerned that Queen's light-hearted sound might lead listeners to believe they were not a serious rock band. Killer Queen almost didn't make it onto the record. It was recorded last, and there was much disagreement about whether to include it. Next came Bohemian Rhapsody. This song, which appeared on the 1975 album A Night at the Opera, propelled Queen to stardom. It was not easy to make. It took 3 weeks to record, had 180 distinct overdubs, and cost £40,000 to make, making it the most costly song ever made at the time. The music was odd and unusual. It was divided into 3 parts: a slow, emotional beginning, an operatic middle, and a thunderous rock conclusion. EMI officials weren't convinced it would work. They felt it was far too lengthy and urged the band to shorten it for radio. The band declined. Instead, their manager discreetly sent the tune to Kenny Everett, a prominent DJ. He played it 14 times in one weekend, and the audience adored it. The song topped the UK charts for 9 weeks running. After Freddie Mercury's death in 1991, it rose to the top of the charts for 5 more weeks. It was not as successful in the United States at first, peaking at 9th place in 1976. However, after appearing in the film Wayne's World in 1992, it rose to 2nd place. It went on to sell millions of copies, becoming one of the best-selling singles in British history. Queen also altered the music video game. The video for Bohemian Rhapsody was shot in 4 hours and cost $4,500. Despite its simplicity, it was innovative. The famous photo of the band's 4 faces in a prism form was made using a technique known as visual feedback. It became famous, establishing music videos as an important aspect of song promotion. Later, Queen continued to create outstanding videos. In I Want to Break Free, the band dressed as ladies, drawing inspiration from the British soap opera Coronation Street. It was humorous and daring, but MTV prohibited it in the United States. Meanwhile, Radio Gaga was one of the most costly videos of its time, costing $100,000. It included moments from the film Metropolis, and Queen paid $100,000 to utilize those parts. Queen's live performances were equally dazzling as their visuals. During their 1975 A Night at the Opera tour, they employed a massive, bespoke lighting setup consisting of 168 lights and 12 airplane landing lights. It was so large that it required its own generator and took hours to set up. By 1986, at their famed Wembley performances, their lighting equipment had expanded to nearly 1,000 lights, including a gigantic crown-shaped structure weighing 5 tons. Freddie Mercury's stage presence evolution. Freddie Mercury's stage appearance developed over time. When Queen first started, Freddie was bashful and often sat behind his keyboard during concerts. The unique mic stand he used, which lacked the bottom part, came about by mistake. The mic stand broke one night during a concert, but Freddie discovered he enjoyed the freedom it provided and decided to stick with it. His style gradually got more bold. In 1973, he began painting his nails black, inspired by Jimi Hendrix, and began wearing Zandra Rhodes's theatrical glam rock costumes. In 1976, he donned his iconic Harlequin jumpsuit, a tight outfit that had to be stitched on him before each performance. By the 1980s, Freddie had changed again. He acquired a big mustache and adopted a more manly image, wearing leather leggings and military-style coats. This shift was influenced by the homosexual club culture in New York. He maintained his cheerful energy. In the I Want to Break Free video, he dressed in drag but kept his mustache, which puzzled some people and sparked controversy. Freddie's theatrical antics grew crazier with time. During the Hot Space Tour in 1982, he began riding on the shoulders of a crew member costumed as Darth Vader and sang "We Will Rock You." During a concert in Japan, he stripped down to only a pair of shorts, removing his outfit piece by piece as the act progressed. Freddie's charm and flamboyant manner made each performance remarkable. Freddie Mercury and Queen underwent significant transformations in the 1980s. The band experimented with a fresh sound with their 1981 album Hot Space. Freddie and John Deacon wanted to explore disco and funk music, but many fans disliked it. The song Body Language, released in 1982, sparked even more controversy. Its lyrics and music video were too provocative at the time, thus MTV banned it. This offended fans, but Freddie continued to experiment with new musical concepts. In 1985, Freddie released his debut solo album, Mr. Bad Guy. He worked on it for 2 years in Munich, giving close care to every detail. The album was filled with dance music and synthesizers showcasing Freddie's creative side. He even dedicated it to his pets, stating, "This album is for my cat, Jerry." Also included are Tom, Oscar, and Tiffany, as well as all cat lovers in the globe. Screw everyone else. It peaked at number 10 in the United Kingdom, but performed poorly in the United States. Nevertheless, it gave Freddie the courage to do more. Later, in 1987, he collaborated with opera vocalist Montserrat Caballé on her album Barcelona. The title single combined opera and rock, showcasing Freddie's tremendous vocals. The song became the anthem for the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona. Unfortunately, Freddie died before seeing it done. At the same time, the Queen was suffering as a group. After Hot Space was released, they went on tour, but by the end of 1982, they had decided to take a hiatus. The band was not getting along. Brian May subsequently admitted, "We hated each other for a while." Things worsened while recording their 1984 album, The Works. Brian became so furious that he left the studio and spent hours at a park contemplating leaving. John Deacon abruptly left for Bali without informing anyone, shocking everyone. When Freddie learned about it, he humorously sang Bali High from South Pacific. There was also conflict outside of the band. Queen played in Sun City, South Africa in 1984 during apartheid. Many individuals were outraged because the government enacted discriminatory legislation. The Musicians' Union banned the band while the United Nations opposed it. Later, during a concert in Rio de Janeiro in 1985, the audience booed them. Freddie's personal life contributed to the pandemonium. His manager, Paul Prenter, caused several conflicts among the band. Brian May refused to name him in interviews, instead referring to him as the guy who looked after Fred. Everything changed on July 13, 1985, when Queen played at Live Aid. Freddie was not feeling well and had voice issues, but he opted to play nonetheless. When they took the stage at 6:41 p.m., they gave one of the best live performances ever. In 21 minutes, they performed portions of their biggest singles, including Bohemian Rhapsody, Radio Gaga, and We Are the Champions. During Radio Gaga, Freddie led the audience in clapping, producing a unique experience. More than 1.9 billion people watched the concert on television. Backstage, Elton John said, "You bastards, you stole the show." The performance revitalized Queen's career and injected fresh life into the band. Following Live Aid, Queen began working on a new album called A Kind of Magic. It was intended to be the soundtrack for the film Highlander, which was about immortality. They started recording in 1985 and used new digital technologies to make the album seem current. The title song, A Kind of Magic, was inspired by a statement in the film, but Freddie altered the original version, which infuriated Roger Taylor. Brian May wrote another song, Who Wants to Live Forever, inspired by a scene from the film. It included an 80-piece orchestra, lending it a grand, dramatic sense. Strange facts about Freddie Mercury's final concert. The year 1986 marked the beginning of Queen's most ambitious and thrilling tour to date. The tour, which they referred to as the Magic Tour, was unlike anything else that they had ever done before. Within a span of only 8 weeks, they intended to perform a total of 26 gigs in 9 different countries across Europe. The tour debuted on a stage that was very stunning. It was enormous, measuring 160 feet in width, and it included 2 long pathways that extended into the crowd area. In order to power everything, it required more than 8 miles of cables, making it one of the biggest structures ever constructed. The height of the television screen was 20 feet, and since it was so large, it required its very own generator. People who were located kilometers away were able to hear the music because the sound system was so loud. The noise in the neighboring communities was even a source of complaint for some. First appearing on stage in Knebworth Park on August 9, 1986, Freddie Mercury was a member of the band Queen. It was 6:41 o'clock in the evening. He had no idea that it would be the final live performance he would ever give with Queen. It was a really large audience. There were 120,000 people who had come to watch the spectacle. At the moment when the opening chords of One Vision were played, the excitement was over the roof. Freddie sported his well-known white tank top and fit pants for the occasion. Although he appeared to be in good health, he came off as self-assured. His throat was irritated according to the doctor who examined him that morning. Though he cautioned Freddie not to perform, Freddie chose to disregard his advice. His admirers were not going to be disappointed. While he was singing One Man, One Goal, One Mission, his voice somewhat cracked, but it did not appear that anyone was bothered by it. In the meantime, the band had been working on putting together a backup set list. They were concerned that Freddie could have difficulty with the more difficult songs, but as the evening progressed, he demonstrated that they were mistaken. He desired to provide the audience with the performance that they had come to see. There was a high note in his voice that cracked when he was under pressure. Rather than pausing, he turned his attention to the throng and asked them to join him in singing. Because of this, the occasion became much more memorable. A rendition of Who Wants to Live Forever was performed by the band at 8:03 p.m. This was without a doubt one of the most heartfelt moments of the evening. It seemed as though Freddie was singing about his own life since the words struck a distinct chord. At 8:17 o'clock in the evening, Bohemian Rhapsody was performed. Freddie gave it his all, despite the fact that it was one of the most difficult songs in Queen's repertoire. In addition, he performed live renditions of portions of the operatic piece which was often played from a recording. A high note that he hadn't attempted in years was hit by him and the audience went absolutely berserk. We Are the Champions was the final song that was performed that evening. Although Freddie's voice broke once again, he did not draw back but instead held the note for an even longer period of time. The clamor of the gathering was so loud that it could be heard in the villages that were close. The song God Save the Queen was played by the band at 8:59 p.m. However, Freddie remained on stage even though this was the time when they would normally depart. His eyes were closed as he remained still as the music played. As the last chords receded, Freddie turned his attention to the audience. He made a profound bow and then added, "Thank you, wonderful people. I hope you have a restful night in bed." It was 9 minutes past 2 o'clock. In spite of the fact that Freddie Mercury had just finished his final live performance, things were not going well behind the scenes. Something that was unexpected took place behind the scenes. It was the quiet and serene bassist John Deacon, who acted in a manner that no one had ever seen him do before. His bass instrument was thrown across the dressing room only 18 minutes before the performance was scheduled to begin. There was a close call with Roger Taylor's drum tech. In his 15 years with the band, Deacon had never been this unhappy before, so everyone was astonished to see him in such a state. Later, he conveyed to Brian May, "I am unable to continue doing this." It ought to be more. It seems as though he was of the opinion that this may be their final performance with Freddie. In addition, Deacon went into an argument with the sound engineer asking that the bass levels be adjusted. When Deacon came onto the stage, he performed one of the most impressive performances of his whole life, despite the fact that it was obvious that he was furious. The gathering was also the scene of a fatal event that took place that evening. During the performance of the song, Who Wants to Live Forever, a fan named Michael Jennings, who was 23 years old, passed out. Approximately 50 meters away from the stage he was standing. As swiftly as they came, medical personnel were unable to rescue him. A death certificate was issued for him at 9:43 p.m. Bohemian Rhapsody was being played by Queen at the time. It wasn't until after the concert that the band was introduced to the news. Jennings had a cardiac issue that had not been detected, and the thrill of the event together with the enormous throng of 120,000 people increased the severity of the disease. Jennings had won his ticket in a radio contest just 2 days before the beginning of the event. Sarah, who was with him at the time, said that he was having the time of his life to the fullest extent. It was the finest night of his whole life, he insisted over and over again. And then, all of a sudden, he simply fell. This tragic event resulted in the establishment of more stringent safety regulations for large-scale concerts in the future. In a manner that was not typical of him, Freddie Mercury departed the stage almost immediately after the performance. Freddie was a fan of the post-show parties and would typically remain to engage in conversation with the cast and staff. However, he hurriedly left the stage barely a few seconds after the conclusion of the last song. A further explanation was provided by his assistant, Peter Freestone, who stated that Freddie had received a phone call from his physician before the show. It had to do with his health, and it must have been a source of concern for him. It appeared that this, in addition to the physical exertion required for the performance, was weighing on him. In addition, Freddie forgot to take his silver bracelet with him, an item of jewelry that he has worn to each and every concert since the year 1977. The item was eventually recovered by a cleaning, and it was given back to him. While Freddie was sitting in silence on the journey back to London, he gazed out the window and dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief. He was obviously engaged in a lot of intense contemplation. There was a short moment of weakness for Mercury behind the scenes. He went to Peter Freestone, his lifelong friend and personal assistant, and murmured, "I don't know if I can do this." Peter Freestone was his personal assistant. Additionally, Roger Taylor recalled a spooky incident that occurred after the concert. It was in the dressing room that he discovered Freddie sitting by himself. When Freddie gazed up at him, he remarked, "Darling, I believe that I have given it my highest priority." Roger was under the impression that Freddie was simply exhausted at the time, but now he understands that Freddie was actually saying farewell. In order to serve as a constant reminder of their final performance, Roger maintains a drumstick from that night in his studio. John Deacon, who has been out of the public spotlight for a number of years, described it as the most difficult performance he has ever given. During the performance of These Are the Days of Our Lives, he said that he started crying because he was afraid that it would be the final time that they would perform together. When the night came to a close, it seemed like the end of an era for everyone in the band. Freddie walked on stage in a regal yellow jacket and white pants, bold, commanding. But at the very end, he returned for the encore wearing a royal crown and cloak, a silent symbol, a message to the world. This is my curtain call. Before the show, Freddie requested thousands of black and white balloons, but no red, no blue. Why? Insiders say it symbolized duality, life and death, day and night. Something he'd been thinking about more than ever. Queen had planned to close with We Will Rock You as always, but Freddie insisted on finishing with God Save the Queen, a patriotic anthem. Yes, but also his quiet farewell to the fans and to his own reign as rock's greatest frontman. No one knew it was the end. Even the band wasn't fully aware this would be their last full concert with him. Brian May would later admit, "If we had known, we would have held on to every second." And here's the most haunting detail of all. A fan in the front row took a photo of Freddie kneeling, one arm raised, bathed in golden light. That image would later become one of the most iconic photos of his career. Not just because it captured his power, but because it was unknowingly capturing his final bow. Many in the audience say that Freddie's energy that night was unearthly, as if he was pouring every last ounce of himself into that stage. And maybe that's exactly what he was doing. Over 120,000 fans gathered for what they believed was just another epic Queen show. But only a few people backstage knew the truth. This would be Freddie Mercury's final full live performance. Ever. Though he hadn't made his diagnosis public, Freddie already knew something wasn't right. And those who were close to him, they could feel it. This wasn't just another concert, it was a goodbye in disguise. A tale of deep relationships, struggles, and surprises. In his life, Freddie Mercury had a multitude of profound connections, challenges, and unexpected events. Mary Austin was widely regarded as one of the most significant individuals in his life. Through the interviews that he conducted, mostly for David Witt, he revealed some things about our relationship. In 1969, when Freddie was 24 years old and Mary was 19 years old, they first met. Almost immediately, they fell in love with one another, moved in together, and even got engaged. In 1976, however, Freddie disclosed to Mary that he was a bisexual. Mary responded to Freddie in a manner that was both calm and honest, saying, "No, I think you're gay." They remained close friends for the rest of their lives, despite the fact that this occasion altered their romantic connection. Mary was described as Freddie's one and only genuine friend, and he insisted that no one could ever take her place. Even though they were no longer a couple, Freddie continued to show concern for Mary. In 1980, he purchased a flat for her in Kensington, which was located in close proximity to his own residence. As part of his will, he stipulated that she would get 50% of his wealth, which included his house. Mary remained at his side as his health deteriorated, and after he died away, she remained silent about the location of his ashes being dispersed as Freddie had requested. There were several more partnerships that Freddie had. In 1985, he found himself in the company of Jim Hutton, a hairdresser, and the two of them remained together until Freddie's passing in 1991. However, Freddie's life was not uncomplicated. Additionally, he had a close relationship with an Austrian actress by the name of Barbara Valentine, and the three of them occasionally engaged in activities together. Freddie's personal life was extremely convoluted, as evidenced by the fact that his relationships frequently overlapped. Struggles with sexuality and public image. Throughout his whole life, Freddie struggled with issues pertaining to his sexuality and his image in society. In 1946, he was born, and he grew up at a period of time when being homosexual was against the law in many areas. He was aware of his attraction to guys from an early age, but he had to conceal it. Freddie would make jokes or say something ambiguous in response to anyone asking him about his sexual orientation. For example, he would declare that he was as homosexual as a flower. By doing so, he was able to escape the facts while yet maintaining his humorous demeanor. Freddie was not only a musician, but also an artist in his own right. In college, he majored in art and design, and he had a passion for painting. Over the course of his life, he amassed a collection of exquisite and unique items, including works of art by Picasso and Dali, as well as Japanese woodblock prints. Furthermore, he had a passion for collecting ancient glass and even commissioned pictures of his feline companions. The extent to which he valued aesthetics was demonstrated by the fact that his collections filled his residence. Final public revelation. Over the course of several years, Freddie Mercury concealed the fact that he was battling AIDS. No one, not even the majority of his closest friends, was informed of his decision. He found out that he had HIV in April of 1987, but he had already begun to exhibit certain symptoms as early as 1982. He went to a doctor for a spot on his tongue when he was on a vacation to New York City in that particular year. It's possible that this was an early warning sign of the illness. Mercury continued to deny all of the reports that circulated regarding his health despite this. The press did not allow him to take a seat. In 1986, British tabloids, particularly The Sun, began publishing articles regarding Mercury's health. It's possible that he chose to remain silent because of these publications, in addition to the fear and stigma that surrounded AIDS at the time. Even while they were in Queen, the band seldom ever brought it up. Brian May, who plays the guitar, stated that they did not ask questions because Mercury did not want them to. Nobody who was very close to him was aware of the truth. Later on, his aide Peter Freestone stated that Mercury had witnessed the deaths of numerous acquaintances due to AIDS and that the disease was always on his mind. Initially, he communicated with his cats, and as time went on, he became friends with them. He would give them a call. It was Mercury's desire to safeguard himself and those who were closest to him. The public statement that he issued was issued just one day before he passed away. During all those years, he stated the reason he had kept it a secret. Because Mercury appeared to be getting smaller and weaker over time, people continued to speculate. Finally, on November 23, 1991, he disclosed to the public that he was suffering with AIDS. Sadly, he passed away the next day. As a result, years of silence and conjecture came to an end. Mercury never seemed to give up on music, even while he was in a critical condition. Queen released their album titled Innuendo in the year 1990. In an effort to be of assistance to him, the band altered their itinerary. After putting in 3 weeks of work, they took a break for 2 weeks so that Mercury could get some rest. When that time came, the band was aware of how critical his health was, despite the fact that physicians advised them that Mercury didn't have much time left. Mercury pushed himself to continue working according to Brian May. A song that became a symbol of his commitment was "The Show Must Go On," which was one of the tunes. However, May was skeptical that Mercury would be able to manage the difficult vocals. Following the consumption of a shot of vodka, Mercury said, "I'll fucking do it, darling." After that, he came through with a flawless performance in only one take. When Mercury had finished recording Innuendo, he continued to record. It was in May of 1991 when he began working on songs such as Mother Love, but he was unable to complete them. In 1991, on May 22nd, he participated in his final recording session. While he was still alive, he recorded the song A Winter's Tale, which was included on the album Made in Heaven. Mercury worked valiantly to leave behind music that would endure for all of eternity, even as he was suffering a medical condition that was deadly. His final public appearance was on February 18, 1990, at the Brit Awards. Freddie Mercury passed away on February 18, 1990. An award was presented to the Queen in recognition of their outstanding contribution to British music. Fans were taken aback by Mercury's appearance, which was bleak and exhausted. In spite of everything, he came to pay tribute to his band and his followers. On the stage, Brian May delivered the majority of the remarks. "It's true that he came to see us play. Freddie came along to watch us perform with a little group that we named Smile. He was really excited and full of enthusiasm during the entire performance. It was only Mercury who said, 'Thank you and good night.' It was a straightforward yet heartfelt farewell, and these were his last comments to the public." Over the course of the final few months of his life, Mercury's health rapidly deteriorated. His residence in Kensington, West London, was where he spent the majority of his time by June 1991. In order to provide him with support, his close friends and his ex-partner, Mary Austin, paid him frequent visits. "I had to wait a very long time before I could say that I was truly in love with this man." His health continued to deteriorate. He did not have the ability to walk about much, and he spent a lot of time in bed. On November 22, 1991, he stopped taking all of his medications with the exception of those given for pain management. On the same day, he collaborated with Jim Beach Queen's manager to draft a statement for public consumption. The statements were made public on November 23, and they confirmed that he had been diagnosed with AIDS. Freddie Mercury, who was 45 years old at the time of his death, passed away on November 24, 1991. The AIDS-related pneumonia that led to the death was the cause of death. During his dying minutes, his lover Jim Hutton characterized them as tranquil. He also mentioned that Mercury was calm and bright before he passed away. The popularity of Mercury's songs continued to rise even after he passed away. In 1995, Queen issued an album titled Made in Heaven, which served as a compilation of his last songs. With over 20 million copies sold, it became a huge success all over the world. The enduring legacy of Mercury continues to flourish. Queen's Greatest Hits CD is the best-selling record in the history of the United Kingdom, and his music has been streamed billions of times. Fans all throughout the world continue to be inspired by the everlasting voice and passion of Mercury. What do you think was Freddie's most iconic live moment? Was it Live Aid? Or was it this silent, majestic farewell? Let us know in the comments. If you love Queen and Freddie, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the Maddie channel for more untold stories, music legends, and emotional moments that shaped history. Thank you for watching, and long live the legend.